Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Iblis Manifestations podcast. This channel features lengthy off-limits conversations with various different artists and entrepreneurs, predominantly from the underground metal scene. We take deep dives into the topics of life, music, spirituality, and take insight from a variety of thought-provoking perspectives from personalities who you don't often hear from in a mainstream settings. I am your host Cheyenne, and I was originally born and raised in Iran and currently reside in the UK. I am the frontman and founding member of the black death metal band TRIVAX, who have been active since 2009. The band originally started in the Islamic Republic of Iran, where such type of music is banned as well as a punishable offense. You can check the band's pages for any updates on tour dates as well as new music. I am also a personal trainer and an online fitness coach who specializes in people achieving the best versions of themselves physically and mentally. Having been someone who was once extremely out of shape and overweight, I find it to be my duty to be able to pass on the information and knowledge which I've gained to help others achieve the same transformation. The Iblis Manifestations podcast also features a variety of solo episodes where I discuss personal experiences and anecdotes in a very candid fashion, covering everything from mental health, spirituality, philosophy, and even paranormal experiences. This is the Iblis Manifestations podcast. To support it, be sure to subscribe to the channel and visit the link in the descriptions.
It's great talking to you, Cheyenne, really. And best of luck to your endeavors for this podcast. I think it's a great initiative.
You're my favorite person to talk to for interviews and stuff. So I love what you're espousing out here. I love the knowledge and the perspectives that you're curating through this, and I'm just so honored to be a part of it. Thank you.
As I told you, it was one of the most interesting interviews I've ever had, because we talk a lot more things than just music, and I really appreciated that.
I respect you deeply, and it's an honor to be here.
And friends, remember as always, better to die on your feet than to live on your knees. Enjoy the podcast. Okay, Nicolas, good evening, sir. It's with an absolute honor and a privilege to have you on Iblis Manifestations. How are you doing tonight?
I'm fine. First of all, I would like to thank you for this kind invitation. I'm very glad to meet you in person and to discuss many things together.
Yes, me too. So I'll have to be totally candid with you. I've been following ACHERONTAS for quite a while, and actually, I've had it in mind to have you on the show for quite a long time, and then some recent stuff popped up, and then I thought, okay, you have a new album out now as well, so perfect. Now is just the right time to perhaps discuss, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you, man, and then hopefully we can maybe get into some of the more esoteric stuff down the line as well.
Sure, of course. I am open to discuss anything you wish for the new album and in general. But thank you a lot for your compliment about the new album.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely killer, man. I was actually just listening to it not too long ago. I mean, obviously, if I'm not mistaken, it's like your 10th full-length album with the band, and it sounds fantastic, man. The second track in particular, Serpent's Oath, if I remember correctly. Just something about the melody and the vibe, and I think one thing about you guys that always kind of stands out as well. I mean, the Hellenic scene has always been known for more of its perhaps philosophical approach to this kind of music to begin with. But I think one thing with you guys is that there's a lot of very cool content in the lyrics as well. So maybe we should start from that.
Yes. The new album, it's called Nikia, the Necromantic Patterns, and the whole concept has to do with the necromantic art and necromancy, because it's a huge and very important approach for my spiritual path. And I didn't did it before regarding the Αχέροντας concept. So I thought that it will be a great chance to dwell deeper into these practices and recode everything that I am working on, meditations and other practices, to put them into the music and create a concept about it, because except that it's an important spiritual bedrock for someone evolution, I think also it's something that can cover the darkest side of existence and can bring more vibrations out there.
So when you say bringing more vibrations out there, is this a case of the seeds of light have to be planted in darkness first? Is that the kind of approach here? Is it more of like a shadow work in the context of music? Is that what you're referring to?
In general, necromancy is an important part of my spiritual practices and has to do with dream workings and other esoteric practices like sigil crafting and astral workings for including Hermeticism and Kabbalah. So I think that necromancy has no boundaries. You can find necromancy from ancient Vedas and ancient Sumerian, still the ancient Greece, and further to more Gnostic traditions that can combine many elements, but the basic essence is to bring forward the dark subconscious and create a new form and a new perspective and mentality for what we call the real essence of life and what we define what it means, the true inner self.
Of course. Okay. So just so I understand correctly, the approach is, which of course this is a common understanding within these types of spiritual practices, but the essence of the approach is one of essentially manifesting things into reality from the other side. Now, in the case of necromancy, I suppose that's perhaps something that's more related to the dead, if you will.
Yes, by one approach is this one, but the other approach is a connection with the shadow side of existence and the subconscious mind, and how you can connect with your ancestors, and how you can connect the death-like experience and also out-of-body experience in astral plane. And always I'm trying through the exercises and the practices and the teachings that I'm following over the decades to recode them through lyrics and music to whatever I do with the coven.
How did you start getting into the more spiritual side of things? Was this something that you were always into when you were quite young? Was this something that kind of developed later on in life? Where did that kind of ignition begin for you, if you can recall?
I started in theory, studying many books around 1994, 1995, but I was only into the theory practices, into the theory, and after 1999, I started to be initiated in some esoteric traditions that were based to the ancient mysteries regarding Sumeria and Egyptian.
What started the interest to begin with, though? Like, was there something in particular that kind of caught your attention? Was it just as sort of like I know for a lot of people, it's like an add-on that kind of comes in with just being a metalhead. Obviously, not everyone goes there, but how did you actually become interested in that to begin with?
The mystery of life and death, it was always something of my interest. So I think it was a natural process to go and search deeper after many years studying only in theory, not in practice. The ancient Egyptian mysteries, Sumerian, and all of this stuff. When I was real interesting to dwell deeper into the practices, I thought that the basic factor that guided me to check these traditions was the immortality. was the eternal life and the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, and how this interact to the mundane life, and how we can connect this that Crowley mentioned about us above, so below, and everything regarding the magic and the spiritual transcendence that is called mental technology. It was the basic factor that I wanted to strive to and look deeper behind the purposes of magic and spiritual evolution.
I see. Okay. That's very interesting. So when you're talking eternal life, what does that exactly mean? So is that like a reference to just life being an ongoing process of cycles within obviously the different dimensions, or like exactly what is that referring to?
Immortality always was the basic subject that all the religions and systems from the ancient years, from the ancient dynasties, still nowadays, all the systems and philosophies and religions were interested about the afterlife and how the soul can survive and live longer and longer and achieve immortality. In this topic, there is a great contradiction and distortion during the passing of centuries, and I find it very logical. But I think the first fountain of my gnosis was the ancient Greece. So the Orphic mysteries, it was my first study, how we can approach this perspective and mentality. And then I went deeper to the Egyptian Book of the Dead, from ancient Egypt, and I was trying to recode the true essence of the ancient teachings and how we can connect them with nowadays life, how we are living, and how we can proceed to have a better understanding of these ancient teachings. And immortality, it's so simple as that, to continue live conscious after your death. And the whole mystery behind it, it's to achieve immortality, also as the ancient Egyptians were striving to do through physical forms. The important is the astral survival and how the conscious mind can always continue to keep not the ego by the way that the East refers to, but as the West referring to keep the immortality and the lucidity, the awareness to the higher level of existence.
Understood. Okay. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Because one thing that I've quite commonly discussed on the podcast here is, especially when we do get into more of the esoterics, more rather than esoterics, just a more spiritual aspect of things, is that one thing that always fascinated me is the thought that we have never, at least in the physical format, actually experienced death directly, because through our ancestors and our bloodline and family and everyone who've had before us, just even our parents, they've always passed on our DNA before they themselves died. So technically, this life is kind of already eternal up until this point, but then it's a case of passing it on. Do you understand where I'm coming from with that? Yeah,
it's true. Although even in the topic about immortality, there are great contradictions regarding the ego. The ego is the personality of the individual, it's the memory, it's the true essence of the being. The dissolution of the ego has to do with the lower instincts of the individual and how he can attain how to attain and how to embrace the godhood inside him. Out of this, when we are looking out of the existence and we look in a different way, in different mentality, not inwards but outwards, we can see that the process of the conscious mind can go deeper to the dark shadow side of the unconscious mind, and that can struggle to survive after the physical death. There are also some metaphors used to the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead regarding these mysteries that in my belief and in my research, the true draconian mysteries of royal blood has to do with what we know today as astral vampirism and as lucid dreaming, mindfulness, and awareness. All of these night sight techniques regarding lucidity, mindfulness, awareness, and the mortality of the soul were deep into the Typhonian tradition as well. Is the true alchemy that started thousands of years before to the first dynasties of Egypt.
I see. So, I mean, in the case of Egypt, that would also make sense because I know that their understanding of afterlife was quite an interesting one. I was always very fascinated by that, actually, how you basically had to live your life to an extent where you would have to. It was almost like you were trying to score a number of points, and that when you made it to the afterlife, you were essentially in a state of limbo where you had to go through obstacles and puzzles. And the better you lived your life, essentially the more straightforward and easier those puzzles would be before you would then reach a state of nirvana, or AKA heaven, if you will.
I think that the mundane life, the day-side life of the individual is the same important as the night-side life.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot have obstacles in your day-side and mundane life, and you cannot conquer the real life, what you experience with your senses, and striving for night-side exaltation. I think the life that we are living, the mundane life, is very important. How to conquer life, how to raise our will, how to achieve mindfulness and awareness. Because I think the true spirituality is not when we light the candles, burn incense, and meditate. The true spiritual life is in every angle in our lives. When you have your dinner, your lunch, when you go to gym, how you meet your friends, how to react to society, everywhere. Mindfulness and awareness is in all aspects of life. So I think it's a bit disappointing that most of the individuals, they are trying to look only to the night side of the things, and they are trying to achieve a night side superiority. But at the same time, the day side life lacks of will, lacks of success, of mastery. How you can go and look deeper to the spiritual side of things when in your real life you cannot conquer your low instincts, when you feel hate, for example, when you cannot control your love, your passion, when you cannot succeed to your goals, how you can succeed to the night side plane when at the day side you are full of fears, full of mind breaks, and full of obstacles. I think it's very important to raise our will, to take care of our body, because for me, body, it's not a prison, it's a temple. We must be careful how to eat, how to interact with people, to raise our will, to grow our discipline. Discipline and will is the same thing. I cannot be, a hippie in real life and raise my will in the night side. So of course, I think some things are a matter of contradiction nowadays, because, for example, discipline is not a lack of freedom. Discipline leads the individual to the true freedom, to the true liberation.
Absolutely, yeah.
And also, if we look deeper about the immortality, as we said, I cannot strive for immortality when I'm feeding my mind in life with junk food, if you know what I mean. And when I say junk food, I'm not speaking about the real food, I mean about the information that we're receiving from the world around. If we cannot filter out these informations and we are poisoning our body, our soul, with physical or non-physical stuff, I think the spiritual side of evolution is a dead end.
You are preaching to the choir, man. Fuck yeah. So, to give you a little bit of context there as well, I don't know if you've seen sort of any old pictures of me or anything like that online, but I'll quickly summarize it here. So, I can relate to that because that very much aligns with my own worldview, because as you mentioned, the body is not a prison, it's a temple, and to me, it's actually a very direct vessel for channeling spiritual will. That's the way I've always looked at it, okay? And I know this because for me, there was once upon a time, that, as you kind of put it, I think perhaps in the more black metal circles, this is a very common thing to see and experience, that people who are, or at least proclaim to be obsessed with the left-hand path or darkness and death and Satanism and all these things, yet they are essentially, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, they're basically losers, okay? And they've got no strength of body, no strength of mind. Some of them are hooked on substances or alcohol or various other things, whereas to me, by the way, I was that person once upon a time. I was someone who was 119, 20 kilos before, and in a process of spiritual evolution, and obviously learning that it is a case of as within, so without. So by learning to look after my body, lose 40, 45, then 50 kilos, and then getting into discipline, then actually understanding and learning how that then mirrors itself into the spiritual dimensions of life and living. And you made a perfect example of you can't really have freedom without discipline. It is a bit of a paradox, but it is absolutely true. And I think that the same can be said, like without light you can't have darkness, without darkness you can't have light. Okay. I know it's such a cliche, basic thing, but there's something very fundamental about that you can use as a blueprint towards life itself. Like for example, you get the kids now who'll read the entire Wikipedia page for Clipoth because they found out about it through some like black metal release, and then yet they don't have the basic understandings of Kabbalah to begin with, right? So. Yeah. You will get that, and I think it's super important to have this conversation and to actually also hear that from someone like yourself, because you do need to, because how you interact in life, how you interact with people, as you said earlier, your day-to-day mundane stuff, these are things that all affect your frequency and your energy of how you implement yourself in the world, how you coexist with the world. And if you don't have that under control, then your spiritual journey and then like however many books someone might have read, it might not necessarily mean anything unless you're able to be practical with it in that sense. I'd like to quickly interrupt this episode for the following message. My band TRIVAX will be releasing our third full-length album, The Great Satan, via the legendary Osmos Productions on the 30th of May, 2025. If you're into extreme metal that's unapologetically defiant, politically and religiously charged, and unafraid to make bold statements where other ways shy away, then you need to hear this album. I would say that musically, The Great Satan blends dark ritualistic Middle Eastern elements with traditional folk and very dynamic usage of the extreme metal subgenres, creating a unique and immersive soundscape. The intro track actually utilizes folk instruments, including baklama and oud, and throughout the album, you will also get the usage of 3 different languages. One, which is, of course, my native language of Farsi, or otherwise known as Persian. We also have songs that are sung in Arabic and, of course, English. The album embodies rebellion, violence, and ecstasy, unafraid to say what so many extreme metal bands will not. Copies will be available directly from the TRIVAX Bandcamp page, or otherwise from the official Osmos web store. Thank you for your support, and please enjoy the rest of the episode.
What you offer out there to the universe, this is what you will get back. If you are seeking for death, for destruction, for greed, for evilness, this is what you will take back. For me, spirituality, it's not about hatred. It's not about evilness. For me, spirituality is how to understand better myself. It's how to dwell deeper into my inner void. How I will be able to filter out my conscious and subconscious mind. How I can find my balance and the harmony, the alignment between the reason, between emotions. And about this left and right hand path, the world trend, these are modern terms, in my opinion. After the initiation, there is not left or right hand path. There is only spiritual exaltation. I think that true spirituality means no bounds, means no dogma, no fanatism. there is everything in our life, we have duality, okay? It's normal, it's physical, it's natural. But during the process of the spiritual practices, we can understand that this duality must be broken, and we must see behind these fake lights and the alarms of what we have reprogrammed after our birth to what is true, what is false, what is good, and what is evil. For me, the true magic has no color. The true spiritual evolution must know no bounds, no boundaries to anything. We must have an open mind and open heart to be able to feel behind the skin of matter and to be able to understand and then to realize what's the true essence of life, what is the true essence of our beings, and how we can connect with the higher energies. So if I will be stuck in lower frequencies to shout, a lot of people are trying to have the image of dangerous, of evil. Why? Because everyone in the modern society wants to shout out there, hey, I'm here, I am different, I belong somewhere. And what is best to attract the masses? To shout who you are. For me, the individual that knows how to interact with himself and how to interact with the people out there, with the energies, with the society, and to be able to survive in these hardest times that we are living, that everyone believes that we have freedom and that everything is free out there. I believe that in this modern era, we have the true dark ages. Everything is out there as open secrets, but if you are looking behind the screen of matter, you can understand that what we have out there as free enslaved our conscious mind, because it creates expectations, it creates more needs. And I think that the more options we have in our life and the more choices make the individual less happy. I think the fulfillment of an individual is based to conquer his life, not deny life. And that's the ancient Egyptians used to say, and then later the ancient Greeks, from life comes life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you look back to the necromantic patterns, to all philosophies and all religions, you can understand that death was the last enemy that must be destroyed. Death is certain, life is not. But the alchemy process behind this philosophy, because the ancient Vedas used to say that the life is the first illusion, but the final light is born from the life. So I think the individual must look behind his eyes and check deeper some veils of his existence first before he starts to look for higher and deeper aspects.
Absolutely, yes. One thing that you mentioned there that I kind of want to tap into a little bit is that you mentioned about how in the modern world you get a lot of individuals who are more attracted to the, shall we say, the evil side of things, in quotation marks. I say that. I think that a big part of that is also because a lot of people, especially now in today's world, they feel intimidated and they feel very scared and they feel very insecure, although they project the opposite there. I think it's a case of people are afraid of being hurt by monsters, yet because of that, they become monsters themselves, or they try to become monsters themselves so that no one hurts them, okay? This is something that is, I think, very relevant, especially culturally, all across the board, especially in young men. I think this is a very common thing. And I'm not even necessarily saying it's a bad thing, but it becomes, I think it becomes a sort of more of a hamartia when it becomes all about that, like someone's entire life for the rest of their future becomes all about being one-dimensional, evil or dark or whatever, and then yet on the other hand, you know, like it's like, okay, very cool. So you can recite however many things from you know from satanic philosophy, but can you actually love your girlfriend? Can you be in a committed relationship? You know, like can you actually run a business? Can you actually are you physically capable? You know, these are things that that I think are extremely important to keep in mind. Another thing to note there as well, you know, so the duality that you're mentioning, we could talk about that all day. I think it's very interesting because to me, obviously being Iranian, and at least that's where I was born, you know, so I consider myself, or I should say I identify as a Persian, okay? And which I think is, by the way, makes it extra special and perhaps almost like a historic occasion that you and I are sat here talking, okay? And one thing that I'm always been fascinated with, and more so recently, is obviously the ideas within Zoroastrianism, okay? As it was one of the earliest religions that was solely focused on the idea of dualism, in the fact that the shadow and the light both exist, but then within those, you have the body and the spirit and the mind. So it's almost like all of these things all exist at once. Whereas in the case of, for example, Christianity or perhaps more modern religions, it's a case of the body and the spirit are separate things. Whereas I don't think they are. I get the feeling that you have the same understanding that they're not. But one thing that I also wanted to come to as well is that would you consider yourself to be someone, you know, just based on just observing from some of the stuff that you're saying, I don't know if this is a label that you might have heard before, but would you consider yourself someone who's perhaps somewhat of a spiritual libertarian? Is that something that you maybe identify with to an extent?
I hate, you know, the labels, especially in spirituality. I'm nothing. I'm just an individual that has a huge thirst to know deeper myself, to know deeper the essence of life, the universe, to meet more energies, to dwell into the subconscious and conscious mind. And what is interesting for me, it's how I will be able to grow wiser, not to grow, not just to grow older. So I think the label has nothing to do with the spirituality. Spirituality means freedom. So if I have to say a label for me, I could just say esotericist.
Esotericist. Okay, I got it. The reason why I mentioned that, now, first of all, I do actually agree that labels are somewhat counterproductive in this context. The reason why I was saying that, I was more referring to when you were saying, I kind of got the impression from what you were saying that, you know, there is no right side. There is only one path, you know, and then that's the reason why I used the term. Now, was there any particular kind of experiences for you, like early on, perhaps a childhood or when you were younger, or anything that happened or that made you think, oh wow, hang on, there's a little bit more to life and our experiences than meets the eye? Or was it just simply reading about theory and things like that? But I'm assuming, perhaps I'm being presumptuous here, but I'm assuming there must have been something that happened, whether it was in a dream state or something that made you think, wow, that's a unique experience.
My mind started to be more clear when I was initiated. The second and most important was when I have started to have a deeper knowledge to the astral plane, and I was starting before 20 years to dwell into the practices of dream workings, astral projection, out of body experience, and all of this stuff. And during the process of meditations, in research, because I'm writing a lot of my experiences and I'm keeping notes all the day, mundane and night side, I was dwelling deeper into my conscious subconscious mind, and I have started to understand that this dualism is silly. There is no such boundaries that I can prison myself into it. Because, of course, when I was started in the middle of 90s and the years after, I was this what we discussed before, a devil worshipper that was praising the beast and the Therion, and I was screaming for the Lucifer and all of this stuff. But, this is about metal music. Okay? This is about the adversary. This is about the revolution that we had to do as teenagers. But when I grew up with the passing of years and started to look the things more serious, I understand that these things is beyond mundane understanding. And if someone start to dwell deeper into his inner psyche, can understand that such low instincts to distort our soul with labels, with mind breaks and slave mentality theories is not what I was seeking for. So instead to study and read modern books, I was dwelling always deeper to the ancient sources. And when I was taking these ancient sources and put them in action, in theory, right now, make me more thirsty to dwell into the philosophy and history. I think one mistake that an individual is doing into the so-called occult cycles is that they don't care to read about history, about philosophy. And it's very important aspect in the spiritual life to be able to discriminate with care the truth from fantasy, the archetypes from energies, the real from the unreal, the metaphor, So, because one of my huge interest and love is Stoic philosophy. And helped me a lot to understand that spirituality is not just a research of how I will grow wiser into the astral plane, but how I will raise my energy and how I will exalt my being here, right now, to the eternal present, as the ancient Taoists used to say. And this eternal moment of the present is what we can say this is eternity. When you asked me before about what I define as immortality, and I told you that immortality is the survival of the astral, is to not fall into the second death after your physical death, and to be able to survive your conscious and subconscious mind into the higher level of conscious, right? But if we want to put aside all of this metaphysical theories and practices, because each individual can understand by his own and translate by his own my words, your words, this book, the other book. True immortality is to be able to be mindful and aware right now into the eternal present. If you think for a few minutes, what does it mean eternal present, and to focus your full self, your full inner self, your full being, your senses, and be completely 100% into the eternal present, this is a true immortality.
Absolutely, yeah. It's almost.
I will also use Crowley about it. Crowley had said that in 8 hours of meditation, we can achieve 2 minutes of full 100% mindfulness and awareness. He wanted to say by this that these 2 minutes was the eternal present, was the true immortality, was the real transcendence of being. Because these 2 minutes from the 8 hours of meditation is the real true minutes, how you understand life and understand who you really are.
Well, I think that's a very important thing to highlight there, actually, because even if you want to look at it specifically just from the scientific point of view, then you can perhaps even see traces of how, let's say, that 8-hour meditation how one person is able to perhaps put themselves in a state of naturally occurring DMT, which of course then you know what's happening there. You know that it's not just a thought, but rather a state of being that you can either smoke the substance to get there, or you can die, or something, or you can simply meditate your way to reach that level of consciousness.
For me, drugs is an illusion. I'm not judging anyone that may like to use drugs for his own evolution, for his own transcendence, or whatever reason. I don't care. Everyone has the right and the freedom to do and use any tool that works for him. For me, I'm trying to break all the illusions of what we call in real life, and I don't want to open a new matrix into the matrix that I'm already living. And for me, I think that if you have the ability, if someone has the ability and be able to enter into a deep trance state of meditation, I think this is a true ecstasy. I prefer to raise my will and be in true discomfort with myself, and to feel real pain and to overcome everything, and by my will to be able to break all the bounds and realize the true essence of the astral plane, than using other tools that make me see things or realize things or feel things. I prefer my own hands to solve the situation for me and to move me towards the godhood.
Well, I do appreciate that mindset. I think it's so. To clarify my own position on it, I think that let's say things like DMT, for example, which, by the way, I'm a big fan of, but I also think that is a state that you can get to without necessarily inhaling or ingesting a substance as well, because it is a naturally occurring endogenous substance that is already within us. Okay, so that's a very important thing to keep in mind there. I think that there is a place for psychedelics. There absolutely is, especially because if you look into the ancient cultures and the ancient histories, I think there are numerous numbers and examples of this. Even if you want to talk about the theory that Moses and the burning bush was actually acacia tree, and Moses ingested DMT, and that's how he first fully communicated with God. I think these are entirely possible. I'm not saying it's pure fact, but I'm just saying it's possible based on my own experiences. But also, just to also outline one thing as well, I'm not someone who participates in any kind of substances, for that matter. Well, with the exception of DMT or psilocybin once a year, but I don't even drink alcohol. And many other things like that. I have done in the past many a times, too many times maybe. I think we all might be a little bit guilty of that. I've done all of that. It's no problem. But for me, again, that state of spiritual putrefaction is utterly important. But I also don't want to. I think it's kind of like all paths lead to Rome kind of thing, but how do you get there? How well can you control the situation when you are there? Because let's say in the case of a DMT trip, if you want to put it in the context of a trip, it's an extremely powerful thing, but it's also hard to control that. So would you be better off getting there if you simply get to it through different breathing methods? We haven't talked about breathing yet, or simply just meditation. And I suppose the two do kind of very much crossover anyway. But I do like that approach. I do like the approach of just getting there, because even simply just as someone who likes bodybuilding, I have never used steroids before. But, because I want to feel like I have earned everything that I have, if that makes sense.
I'm trying to have lucidity in my life.
Yeah.
So I don't want to add anything that maybe brings me addiction or confusion. Because as you said before, I checked many drugs in the past, before decades ago. Alcohol, the same. I remember once when I had a meditation before 20 years or something, and I had used some drugs. I really was more confused than what I was in real life. And except this, I think the big challenge is that how you can discriminate with care if what you are living right now after the use of drugs and what you are experiencing without the use of drugs, how you can understand what is true and what is creation of your own fantasy, and how you can discriminate your senses to achieve lucidity if you're boosting yourself to use such tools.
Absolutely. So we share the
For
same
example,
viewpoint on that.
It's not only about drugs. Okay. For example, when I want to make some important and deeper practices, I avoid sugar. I don't eat sugar at all, or I don't eat meat. Why we are doing this? And because you mentioned the ancient years that they were using many drugs, herbs, and all of this stuff. We can also keep in mind that many priesthoods and many periods of the ancient years were much polluted by the politics and about some social taboos and all of this stuff. So what if we take serious what the ancestors used to do, we must again filter out if this works or not. Because what the ancestors used to do in the past, this does not mean that is the right way or that is the healthier way. Because if we take, for example, the ancient Greece or India, the monks and the priesthoods, they were not using any kind of alcohol, any kind of drugs, any kind of meat, and they were in pure absence of everything for days ago. If you visit a Necromantion in ancient Ephyra in Greece, or if you cannot visit or read about it, you can see that for 9 days, the priests and the people that they are visiting these chambers, these corridors, were in absolutely strict use of even water. They wanted to stay as much as possible total sober, total absent for everything mundane and cosmic. They wanted to put away the distractions of the mundane life and be able to achieve the pure lucidity. Because it's different to use the word lucidity in mundane life and how to can connect with the spiritual life of ancient years. True lucidity means the true absence of everything that brings addictions, mind breaks, and change the mindset of the individual to achieve a higher goal.
That's super interesting to hear. Why do I say that? Because, that's more or less identical to the process of preparing for an ayahuasca ceremony. Because that is the same, where for 2 to 3 weeks, you're not really supposed to smoke any tobacco, drink any alcohol. If you're on antidepressants, you're meant to stop that from months and months in advance prior to that because it interferes. Obviously, there are other elements there as well to keep in mind, how the substance may interfere with those who have pre-existing mental health conditions. Though that's a different topic of its own as well. But yeah, it's very interesting because another thing that you also have to do, I think avoiding meat tends to be a common one as well, although there is some debate on that. But the more interesting one is the process of semen retention, for example, that needs to happen for the duration of time, at least 2 weeks leading up to the ceremony. And perhaps there's a part of me that's also speaking from experience when it comes to that. But I think there is something to putting yourself in that truly purified state of being, you know, because for example, you mentioned about the process of lucid dreaming or astral projection, more accurately. That's something that I actually experienced as a 14-year-old. And when I was 14 years old, obviously this is when I was back in Iran, and I went through a period where it was almost like a test. It was almost like a test of my own willpower, where for spiritual reasons, and I really mean this, solely for spiritual reasons, I decided to completely abstain from basically pleasuring myself, okay? And in that time, I noticed that my dreams were becoming a sort of like they were becoming an opportunity for very interesting things to happen. And at first, I noticed that I would get thrown into a very lucid state of dreaming, but I would have no control over it. But over time, the more I did that, I started to get into a state where I could completely control my dreams by my own will. And the most vivid one, which I remember, is being in that state and essentially swimming around my room whilst turning around and looking back at myself. You know, like literally, like as if I was separate from the body, and I would look back and I would see myself sleeping. And then it was almost like a swimming motion, and I swam towards myself. As soon as I reached myself, I woke up and I looked around the room, and it looked exactly like how it looked like when I was in that state. You know, but I find that is very interesting that it was exactly during the time of practicing semen retention, especially at an early age, where I reached that state, you know?
Yeah. I would like also to clarify something from the previous question. The problem that maybe someone facing or the confusion by using drugs without care and without be careful how to use the drugs to the esoteric practices, because as I said, I'm not against. But for me, does not work. So I explained this before. I would like to say that the most important thing is not the chemical drugs, it's the social drugs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think someone, if wish to have weed and have a meditation, this is not a problem. The problem is how you feed your mind with all of these social drugs that they are controlling the masses and the conscious mind of everyone around us. I think the social drugs are the most dangerous ones because they are controlling the mentality and the perspective of the individual. So let's put aside the chemical drugs and all of this stuff. This is a personal opinion and personal choice, someone if can use them or not. But any individual must be very careful with all of the social drugs that poison the conscious mind and the mentality and the perspective of the individual.
Yeah, I think we should probably talk about that. I'm so glad you brought that up again, because when you mentioned it earlier, it was sending off fireworks in my head. So when, obviously, just to clarify as well, you know, things like DMT, psilocybin, ayahuasca, although ayahuasca doesn't like to be compared to other things, those things are not things that are addictive in any way. Like it's like it would take a superhero to be addicted to anything like that. You know, so we'll clarify that part. However, what you're saying about the social drugs, that's such a fucking true thing, man, and it's so important. I mean, I genuinely feel like, especially in the case of legacy media, and not just legacy media, but also social media, you know, when now you know how many fucking bots are there, you know, that are designed specifically just to make people think a certain way, you know, all of the arguments that are people getting into online with these things that aren't actually other people. And this whole fucking cultural vomit of left and right that exists all over the internet, I think is terrible for humans. I think it may be responsible for lowering our overall frequency as a species, which I'm kind of furious about, to be honest with you.
Uh, my daily job is I'm working as a life coach, and I'm doing sessions to many individuals worldwide about mental health problems. What I'm facing every day with my sessions is that people have confusion because they have changed their routines, because they don't find time for themselves to think, and they have an overdose for information around. All of this freedom in society that they are bombing the mind of the people with new needs, new habits, new perspectives, new mentalities. The modern man cannot or have not find the time during the day to filter out all of this. So in the end of the day, he's coming to a conclusion as a confused mind. And I think there is the stronger challenge someone has to face and conquer right now, because the Kaliuga have already shown one of his faces. And for sure, this is just the beginning, to be honest. But I think the individual first must to be able to conquer and have create an iron will and iron base of psychic health first, and then to look for deeper aspects.
I think that's super important. It's funny you mentioned Kali Yuga because when I had my good friend Naz Alchemist from Achilles on the podcast, one of the 4 times that he's been on, we discussed exactly that, the age of Kali Yuga. In fact, it might have been the first time around, and unfortunately, it is something that's quite prevalent. But just coming back to it, you mentioned about individuals being bombarded with information. That is so true, because if you think about a human's natural state, I think that our processor or our intelligence or our consciousness, whatever it is almost in a way like a computer, in the sense that when the storage is full, it starts to slow down, you know, and I think our minds are the same. So every day when we are on the fucking news, doom scrolling on the phone and just getting bombarded with information and all kinds of shit, most of which has absolutely nothing to do with us, but because we are so opinion driven and our sense of identity comes from the way we reflect back at the world and the way we respond to things, we are so fucking hooked on this damn thing that our storage is all full. And this is like a collective thing that's happening to us, and we're too slow. And when you're like that, you're thinking a lot, but you're also not really thinking when your natural build is to just simply think about what food am I going to eat today? Who am I going to hunt? Am I going to be safe? Are my children going to be safe? Are we going to be okay from the cold? You know, that's the thing that's inherently built in us. That's the thing that we come from, you know, the hunter-gatherer DNA. Yet now we're bombarded with, oh, so-and-so in America tore a flag, or someone drove with a car into a crowd of people in such city. Oh, this is happening. Oh, there's people on boats. Oh, there's all these like crazy fucking things that's happening all over the world. And we're bombarded with that. And I do think that whilst on one hand it's good to be informed, you know, and I certainly try and keep myself that way, there is a real detriment to having so much fucking unnecessary information all around.
If we're gonna think what an individual needs for evolution is to empty his cup, to be able to empty his cup and accept new information, make them habits, study, and realize this. No one can do that, because from the first minute we wake up, we take our mobile phone, we have 20 informations in 1 minute, and we have already burnout and overdose. During the day, because the West becomes harder and harder and harder, the individual, instead to focus on himself, focus to out of himself, to what society do, what you do, what this girl do, what the other guy do. Instead to focus on themselves, they are focused to the world out there, and they are losing the balance and the alignment for their lives. As Le Bon used to say at his great book about the manipulation of the masses, he said that how you can make an individual strong, enslaved, by offering him everything in his hands with true liberation. This trick that the modern people believe that we are living in the more free era of we have ever met, okay? The last thousands of years. It's true. But behind this, there is a trick. And the trick is that an individual, if you give him choices, opportunities, and make him to believe that everything is free, that you are free as well, you know about all of this, about the human rights and stuff like that, he feels superior. By make an individual to feel superior, you enslave him deeper and harder.
That's so fucking true. Yeah, man, absolutely. It's a quote that kind of came to mind. You know, I say it's a quote. It's something that I kind of generated in my head. You know, but it was the fact that your thoughts and feelings of how special you are will always be used against you in this world to control you. You know. And what do I mean by that? You know, you think about the fact that there's, 8 billion people on the planet. Fine. That's still 8 billion different souls and different fingerprints, okay? None of them are the same, okay? It's important to acknowledge that even though you can hear a number that's big like that and look out at the world, that we're living in and feel disheartened by it. However, those are all still different. You know, each individual still has their own unique thing. And we're certainly, none of those 8 billion people are equal either. You know, that's another modern myth that's kind of been injected. You know, we can talk about that if you like. But the thing that is very important about that, you know, is that one of the easiest ways to, I think, control people is to narrow down the needs to just one individual, okay? So if it's just one individual for himself, then in terms of like relationships and whatever, then that person, you know, they can indulge as much as they like. But when you have a family, when you have other people to feed, when you have other people to protect, especially as a man, that invokes something else in us that is a lot harder to control, because you will always, well, hopefully, if you're built right, instinctively, you will always prioritize those others and those responsibilities that you have, rather than just your own selfish needs. You know, I think selfishness is something that, ironically enough, is a real big trap for an individual. You know, and I think that very much relates to what you were saying there.
We said before about Stoic philosophy. What does it mean, Stoic philosophy? Stoic philosophy means to focus on yourself and to be able to evolve your life to the maximum. To know your limits, to overcome your limits, and become wiser and more balanced as an individual. Yep. What we see in the modern society, that everyone is living their lives not from inside, but they are living their lives through the lives of others.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, just a quick moment of your time. For the past 3 years, Iblis Manifestations has been entirely self-funded. This means that every subscription fee, every piece of equipment, all of the travel expenses have come out of my own pocket. Over time, people have asked me how they can support the podcast, and to be honest with you, up until now, the answer's been pretty straightforward, and that is simply spread the word. But now, there's another way. I have set up a Patreon account where followers of the podcast will be able to make monthly donations to the podcast, and this will help cover the costs of streaming gear and basically everything else that goes into making this show. This isn't about making a profit, and to be completely honest, it's not about breaking even either, because that's certainly not been the case for the last 3 years. However, if you do find value in the conversations that we're having on this podcast and wish to help them forward, then you can now support the show. just head to the link in description and hit the Patreon button. In addition to that, be sure to check out the Iblis Manifestations Big Cartel page, where we will be selling exclusive merchandise for the podcast. At the moment, we got the Extreme Podcast for Extreme People t-shirts, limited to only 30 copies, and the pre-orders will be sent out from the 1st of July. So the link for that is in the description. And in the future, the Big Cartel page will also include some occult accessories and jewelry, which will be handcrafted by myself. And we will also be selling merch and records by other bands as Iblis will expand into a label of its own. And, of course, it goes without saying, thank you for supporting Iblis Manifestations. It is much appreciated. A lot of people, unfortunately, when they go on social media, they get almost injected with needs that they never had in the same place. You know, it's like this innate human thing that it's like when you're sat in a restaurant and you're waiting for your order to arrive, and then you see someone go past you to deliver someone else's food, and then as soon as you see the dish, it's like, ooh, that's the thing that I want. That's the food that I want, even if you ordered a different plate. And I think it's exactly the same thing. You know, you go on social media and product placements and sponsorships and all of these things, you know, and I'm not an anti-capitalist person by any stretch of the means, but also at the same time, this is something that I think humans in general are very easily taken advantage of. And then it's something that then bleeds into culture, is that, oh, so you want more of this. So you want to dress up a certain way. And, you know, all these big mega corporations feed this into our culture, you know, which will then, I don't know, I think that every time this happens, it, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to be for the best of humanity as a whole. And if you're someone who criticizes that, then you're either a conspiracy theorist or someone who is a whatever label that gets attached to it, you know?
Unfortunately, most of the conspiracy theories became reality the last years.
That is true. That is true.
But I will say this. If the people, cosmos, the world around, focus at least 50% of the time he's spending to judge, to stand against other people, and to focus to other lives, if 50% focus and do the opposite for himself, we would be living in a perfect world right now. Although
I agree.
The individual prefers to stack at the lives of others, judging, and he's not ready to empty his cup to be able to learn more things and establish new habits and to reprogram his mind. Because I believe that everyone has a choice to do that. Mm-hmm. Why no one do that? Because they don't have the time to do that. Because they have lost the focus, and focus is everything. To have focus means that we have mindfulness. To have mindfulness means that we can bring awareness. To have awareness, we can have alignment of the emotions and the reason. And you can ask also yourself, when you are watching the people out there, how many people they have a true alignment between reason and emotions?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really speak on behalf of anyone other than myself, but my guess would be not many people, that's for sure.
Exactly. We have to check and to focus to ourselves, but we must be also observers. Not judging, not disturb the others, not interact to others if we are not wishing to do so. But I think we're living in an era that we must observe the reality and the transformation in life, to people, to society, to everything. I think it's an iron age. I think this is the age that we must focus deeper to the true essence of our being, to dwell deeper to what we need as persons to be evolved, and live outside and leave the world turn around himself for a while.
Absolutely. I think that, I'm very much a firm believer, as I've already mentioned a couple of times here, of the whole as within, so without. Because I think that if you want to do something, if you want to change the world, you have to go inwards. You have to change yourself. If you want to raise your vibrations, you have to go inwards. For everything, if you want to see true change in the world, you have to start with yourself. I think now at the same time, there's almost like, it seems to me, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, although, how many of them have actually come true? But most of them. And I think that, like that aside, I can't help but get rid of this feeling of there's a very, very, very intentional sort of malicious plan in place to lower the frequency of humanity as much as possible. And how do you do that? You get people to, instead of focusing on bettering themselves, criticizing others. I think that's like I can't stand haters, not because of what they say or what they might say about me, but because of the fact that they are continuously betraying themselves. Like, I hate the fact that exists, and there's so much of that in today's world, and it's like all of those are people who are missing out on the opportunity to go and reflect inwards, yet they are trying to paint things elsewhere, find the problem elsewhere, like the whole thing of like start by cleaning your own room, like I think there's real value to that, especially right now.
Everyone is trying to change the world. All the political activists, for example, or the religious activists, everyone is trying to change the world. But to be able to change the world, you must first try to change yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Again,
Indeed.
Here is a huge mistake by all of us. Everyone is doing this mistake, including me, you, and everyone, okay? But the society is the reflection of our inner world. And what we said in the beginning, that what we reflect out there, this is what we're gonna take inside.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important how to feed with our thoughts, with our actions, how we feed our essence of life. It's very important because if you really wish to become a better version of yourself, you have turn inwards and live the best side of yourself out there to reflect in society. As long as you are trying to change the world and focus instead you to focus what others do, or trying to change things that they are untouchable, for example, because let's be honest, okay? Politics and religions are ruling this planet since thousands of years, even to the ancient years, okay? That I guess me and you and everyone, a lot of people have respect about. But if we are looking back also to the ancient years, we can say falsehoods of priesthoods, that they were betrayers, that they were using the masses for their own benefit.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something new that happens right now with politics and religion. It was always like this.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think it's a part of the game of life. Huh? Sometimes life is an intelligence test. I think what we have, everyone, what we must do is to be able to filter out what it works for us, what it does not work for us, and what it works for society or not for the best of society. And instead to be activists, to change the other side of things, it's better to look the inner side of things.
I agree. And I think that one of the very important things with that is also recognizing, yes, there are things that are happening right now that seem terrifying and they seem crazy. But one thing that I actually mentioned on a fairly recent podcast, is when I had Mr. Tom G. Warrior on the show, and we were kind of having like a very friendly debate about this whole idea, of wow, the world's going to shit. But one thing that I was kind of saying, and this is genuinely something that I believe, is that, you could make the argument that the world has perhaps always been ending. Even in ancient Greece, they were saying this. I made the example, I don't know if you ever read that like the trend, that scripture that kind of came out from thousands of years ago, where people were complaining back then, saying, "Oh, the world is ending. The young no longer expect the elder. Nothing ever matters anymore." But then you look at Rome. Rome ended. Rome was basically a variation of the world ending at the time, and you could say that about a lot of things. You could say that about the Ice Age. You could say that about, well, God knows, whatever other human civilizations that might have been around maybe longer than we actually realize. But again, different little topic and tangent there that deserves its own 12 chapters. But I think that's super important. By the way, I do want to open a little bracket here for humor as well. I went to see David Icke with my fiance a couple of years ago in Cardiff, and I don't know if you're a fan, but I remember, because we mentioned conspiracy theorists earlier, there was this older gentleman there in the crowd, and he was wearing this T-shirt, and it was like, I fucking loved it. And his T-shirt said something to the effect of, "I identify as a conspiracy theorist. My pronouns are, I told you so." I was like, fuck, that's just perfect,
Fucking true.
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah, and I just thought I'd bring that up because it was just really funny. But yeah, there's unfortunately a lot of things. The thing that we do have to maybe kind of take into consideration about now that's so different is also the existence of AI and how much easier it is to manipulate information nowadays. Like, you can say that you've got access to the most information there is. Yes, that is true, but how many people are actually actively trying to seek out information for themselves, and how much of the information that's out there is also bullshit,
Exactly, this is the problem. The AI will replace the critical thinking for people.
Mm-hmm.
And the critical thinking is the half of Gnosis and Sophia. To be able to translate everything in your life with the right way and to have a critical thinking to all aspects of life is what makes you an individual. If you will avoid to think, to create, to write lyrics, to create art, or whatever, even in your daily job, if you take ready the solutions and you are not in the position to think for yourself, this is distraction. This is the fall of man. But
Absolutely.
okay, I'm not against technology, okay?
No, neither am I. Yeah.
I'm vaping right now. I'm not smoking, for example, or I'm using a mobile phone. Of course, I'm not against technology, but everything in life depends how we use the tools. From the moment that we are using something and not we are get used by it, it's okay. The problem starts when we are addicted to technology, when we cannot sit by our own and think out of the box, and we are using technology not for the comfort, if you like the word, or to make our lives better, and we are using this technology to become more lazy, more hypnotized, more blind, more dogmatic, more fanatic. This is the end of the world, as your friend said before.
Yes.
This is the fall of man. I believe in the potential of man. Every
Yes.
man has the potential. Everyone is a rising star. Huh? What it requires is to think out of the box, to break bounds, to think 4 times before you react to everything, to be able to observe reality and to be able to discriminate the truth, the fantasy, and use all of these metaphors that we're facing in our daily lives. I think this is one kind of mindfulness. And I think it's very important. Before we start to
Absolutely.
talk about, sigils, about talking to deeper astral things, it's very important to understand what's happening here,
Yes.
to the present, around us.
Absolutely.
I think it's a bit hypocritical to trying to solve and think for outside things, and we leave ourselves total in corruption, in distortion, and contradiction. I remember I had an interview with Jiro Kama, Zoe DeWitt, for my magazine with Jazz and Sounds. And when I asked him about the occult, he replied an amazing thing and said that I think that before everyone starting to dwell into the occult science, first needs a psychotherapy to find the balance with themselves. And I think it's very wise. It's very wise because spirituality, it's not about black metal poetry. It's not about to create a great image and aura around us. Spirituality is dangerous. If you are not in the best healthy mode in your life, it can destroy you completely.
So true. Yeah, I fully agree with that.
Because when you start to be initiated into the occult, to the sacred science, I prefer this term. I don't like the word occult. It's so much trendy and hype the last 15 years. I prefer the old term about sacred science. If we take seriously what is occult science, this sacred science, it's very dangerous. And when someone is starting to reveal himself and see the true essence of his being, this is, I think, is the most dangerous aspect that he can face during the process of his evolution. Because what man has to be in fear with is his true self. Man is a beast of prey.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier that you do life coaching, and I became quite intrigued by that. Because I'm a fitness coach myself, and by extension also therapist and all kinds of other things, which I don't mind. I love helping people kind of just find that real balance and that real strength within themselves. But what's that? What are some of the perhaps more common things that you think are perhaps of like real concern, like perhaps even some of the conversations that you and I are having right now? Is that something that comes up in your work as well? Or what are some of the important notes that you think are quite relevant to perhaps take out and share from that right now?
First of all, I started this company about life coaching because of my interest in psychology over 2 decades now. So I went to the university and take my diploma to be able to practice it and to be able to start a company and all of this, legal stuff. So why I did it? I did it because I love shamanism. And I believe that to be able to heal the soul, the inner void of an individual is magical. Because I believe that the creation is the athame of the sorcerer. And every time that I have a session with an individual, I feel really energetic by helping the others to realize, even if it has nothing to do with spiritual evolution, it's mundane stuff, to be able to heal, the trauma, to be able to heal the soul of other people, make me more wise. Not because I feed my ego, because I help them. No. I don't give a fuck, to be honest, to feed my ego. I feel happy for them because when I see that people are starting to realize who they really are, by this process, I understand deeper who I am.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
And always when I have another person in front of me, I'm not looking what differences I have with him. I'm looking how I can exchange my opinion and how I can learn from him. Because my true mentality is not in spiritual, but in everything in life, is to be student. I don't care to be teacher. I don't care to be guru. I don't care to be leader. I don't have such low instincts. I always want to have the attitude and the mentality and the perspective of a student. And what a student can do is to grow up wiser by exchanging opinion and grow wiser with the interaction of others. And if we discuss this even from the satanic perspective is not to avoid life or curse the mundane. The true Satanism, for me, is to be able to conquer life, to conquer yourself.
Very interesting. How do you think that this approach and mindset that you have, which, by the way, I can definitely say that for the most part, I think we're heavily aligned on. How do you think that this then intertwines with music, since that's perhaps part of the reason why we are here? We may as well talk a little bit about music itself also. So where does the line begin to dissolve between music and spirituality for you, and how is that something that's implemented in the work that you put out with ACHERONTAS, as well as some of your dark ambient stuff, which I'm also a fan of?
I'm trying to recode all my empiricism in the spiritual plane with a coven, with Αχέροντας. I have not used the term coven to create an energy, to sound glorious or evil or whatever. No. I gave this term to the band because when I started Stutthof, before Αχέροντας, in 1997, I started with some individuals that we had the same interest about the occult practices. Yeah. And we were involved together and we were practicing together. And when we started at Stutthof, we were making the same thing. We used our theory, our philosophy, the gnosis from the theoretical patterns to action inside the music. But I always like to recode my experiences and not give everything, straightforward. So for me, the coven is a union of individuals that we can connect and create with me, of course, all the spiritual process that I have mission in my life to be evolved again and again every day.
Interesting. Okay, so it's almost like it's a process of creating an experience, obviously for the listeners, but perhaps first and foremost for yourself to try and find that deeper subconscious.
I never composed even one riff when I was not in the right mood. Every riff in Αχέροντας is after deep meditation or after strict and inner practices of ritual workings. I never take my guitar and starting to compose riffs just to compose. Never. Then when I have the music ready, because there is not ego in the coven, I'm always cooperating with all the members that passed during these 3 decades of the band. I give my music to the other members and they compose to this. When they compose to this, again, everything is coming back to me to filter out everything. When I have the vision in my mind, I create the lyrics, I create the concept, and then it's another matter that I'm using in personal way or with some specific individuals with a coven, because I'm not interested everyone in the coven to be evolved for what I'm doing. Of course not. But what I'm taking and what I receive from the coven, then it's my own work to reconstruct everything and put them into the deeper practices of the occult that I'm using for my spiritual evolution.
How important is it to be spiritually in tune, or at least on the same wavelength as the other people that you create and perform this music with?
You mean with the other members of the coven?
That's correct. Yeah.
The only requirement I have for everyone that has joined the coven from 1996 till now, it was not to be atheist or Islamist.
Oh, well, there you go.
This is the only restrictions I have. This is the only restriction I have. If someone has a spiritual interest, and if it's aligned with me, it's okay. If not, but he's just a researcher, it's okay as well. The most important for me in the coven is to have the same core. the same interest about the spiritual life and about the spiritual evolution. I don't demand from the other members to follow me to any of my activities or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's interesting to hear.
I just want to focus in purity, in chemistry between us, in honesty, and to the brotherhood, because it doesn't matter at all what it matters if I have 3 members in the coven that they are sharing the same thoughts with me, but they are stabbing me behind my back. They are not pure towards the art. They are against my thirst for the art. What's the point? For me, the most important is the honesty, is the discipline, is the love for the art, and to be able to connect together to create and raise the coven in higher and higher levels, in higher frequencies, to make the listener to dream behind the skin of matter and to be able to feel something different from what he receives every fucking minute in mundane life. When I receive messages from people that they are telling me that my lyrics make them see the things in a different way and make them think, or other persons that they are telling me that they have goosebumps when they listen a track, or if they read some parts of the lyrics, this is the most important for me. It's the connection and the union with the individual. It's not, I don't care to tell me if I have created amazing riffs and if you are in headbugging or have a party while listening Αχέροντας. I don't care. For me, what I care most is if I will be able to touch the inner void of the listener.
Absolutely. Very interesting.
I was never the person that I was declaring around that I'm creating masterpieces, or I am a perfect guitarist. No, I don't care. I play guitar for 25 years. And if you ask me, I consider myself a medium guitarist. But when I want to compose black metal, I can do it well. But I don't care to be better and better. I just care to become a composer that I can bring vibrations to the listener. I don't care to be the best one. I prefer, and that's why I prefer in my coven to have less skillful musicians, but have the wolf inside their soul and have flame inside their souls, than be able to play solo like Malmsteen. I don't care about it. I care for the union and to share the same passion and black flame that we have towards the art. I'm a romantic, yes. I'm an idealist, yes. But that's me.
I'm all here for it, man. We certainly share that mindset in common. One thing that's interesting about that, though, that I should point out, and credit to you in being consistent with your approach, but I definitely see and notice a similar pattern, or should we say a parallel between your approach to music and also what you were saying moments ago about being a life coach, in that the priority is in rather the experience itself, rather than, like you said, any accolades or any kind of ego boosts, if you will, which, by the way, that can only also come from a place of confidence. It's important to point that out.
I didn't understand the question.
Yeah, it's not even a question, really. I'm just giving you a compliment, saying that your approach is consistent. I'm saying that. So earlier, when you were saying, I'll refer exactly to what you mentioned moments ago, when I asked you about what you're doing with your work as a life coach, and then you mentioned that to you the true reward is simply just knowing that someone has taken the advice and the work that you've given them and applied it in their personal life, and then that's the true reward, rather than saying, oh, I am this, or oh, I made this person feel better, therefore I'm good, or that it's not that kind of an approach, and I get the very clear impression that it's the same with music as well, that the real reward is in creating that higher level of experience, and then of course sharing that with people rather than just being called like a black metal mastermind or anything like that. That's what I was complimenting you on.
First of all, my gratitude for your kind words. I really appreciate it. I will say this. Okay, I'm working as a life coach and I'm doing psychotherapy to many people.
Mm-hmm.
What is best magical evolution than be able to heal someone? This is the true shamanism. Maybe I don't use herbs, and prayers in front of him, but to be able to understand his inner void and make him understand and realize and get evolved by his own hands and be able to guide him to achieve a higher state of consciousness and be able to solve any mental issues that he may facing. This is true shamanism, but with a different way, a lot of things from the past has just changed masks in the present, religion, everything, okay? So for me, the connection that I'm using to raise even my spirituality through my daily job, I think it's a blessing because make my horizons to be wide open and how I can communicate with other people and how I can understand the structure of society and dwell deeper in some chords that are serving very well the process of my evolution.
That's incredible. And hearing you use the term shaman is very interesting to me, because I've been very much interested in shamanism. Granted, like many things in the modern world, there are a lot of pollutants in it, and it's perhaps modern understanding. But I think that when you look into the history of shamanism, I think the way you're describing it there, I think that is a relevant description. And it's also something that, I actually totally relate to you, because as a fitness coach, I have the same relationship. I was with one of my clients yesterday, and I had, interestingly enough, actually a very similar vein of conversation where, I think that for me, the real reward of it, yes, there's a financial incentive, but that's almost like only there as means of protecting my time and the skills that I've earned. Perhaps you'll relate to that also. And I think that the real goal of it, why even doing it in the first place, is to not turn someone into something, but to hand them the key so that they can go and put it in their chest and then turn it, or put it into their head and turn it, and I think that's the real goal of it. And even with my name, Cheyenne, like every time someone messages me, autocorrect makes it shaman because it's only one letter away, So I mistakenly, but perhaps not mistakenly, get called it all the time as well. So it's very interesting that you mentioned that.
First of all, I love Castaneda books. I have grown up in 90s with his books, so my mentality, influenced a lot by his writings. And what is the best in metamorphosis of an individual than to be able to transcend and change the mentality of others when they are sitting in front of him, not for his own benefit, but for their own benefit. This is one aspect by the dissolution of the ego. If you think around in society what people are doing, 8 to 10 actions are selfish.
Yeah, that's true.
And we are feeding our egos every fucking minute with everything, even by the way we are love our partners, even why we are doing the jobs that we're doing for money or whatever. We are doing a lot of things that they are selfish. I'm trying to find in my mundane life the opportunity to leave the ego behind and to be able to dissolve my ego every time that I have an individual, because I think it's a great respect for yourself if you are able to understand the conscious mind of another person in front of you. And I think this is a quality mentality, a healthy mentality. And I think that what is missing from society is ethos, kindness, quality, and to be able to interact each other without focusing how to change the others for our benefits, but to help to change the others for their own sake, By this
Yeah.
way, each one of us, we can empty the cup. Because if we are changing our mentality and our perspective to our everyday lives, we're able to see a different option of life. Because I think that everyone is saying life sucks, government sucks, politics sucks, people sucks. Everything depends of the angle that we observe reality, from the angle that we observe life. We can focus to see all the negative things in our life, right? It's around us. We can easily watch it. But for sure, for every individual, there are different angles and perspectives that if we can see life from a different angle, we can change completely our mentality. I was reading a fascinating article by Peterson, the psychologist, that used to say that he had an interview with Zina, the daughter of LaVey, and the next day he did an episode about magic and how we can transcend our conscious mind. And Peterson said that if we change this metal technology in our mind and see reality by different angle, we can see life with different eyes. This means that the reflection that we're going to have to the universe, it will be magnificent. And we can break bounds and the chains that society enslave us. And it's fucking true.
Yeah.
If we can see this from our own eyes and put it in action, because then he mentioned that he did a therapy with an individual, that he was trying to make an experiment with him, to put him for 30 days to keep positive thinking. When I say positive thinking, I guess Peterson means the same thing, of course. It's not about the toxic positivity that we are trying to see things with a positive way. This is bullshit, of course. Okay?
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
This is bullshit. For me, the toxic positivity is worse than misery and depressive mentality. Toxic positivity is the worst. He means to have a different perspective and mentality in life, to see with a positive thinking his own core of experience, and to see with the same eyes the reality out of him with the same angle of positive thinking. Then the therapist advised him how to do it and gave him some methods and tools. The guy that was using this therapy, in 30 days, he had raised his financial, he had raised he had solved the problems with his health. He solved every interaction with the people around him that he had problems and he cannot connect with them. He got married in 1 month and his life completely changed for the positive. And all of this because he reprogrammed his mind and put aside all of this society propaganda that they are trying to manipulate our conscious minds. And the results were amazing. And if you ask me, this is a form of magic as well. This is mental technology.
Yeah, I would actually agree with that. And I have seen that. It's interesting that you actually make his case again. He's someone that, especially recently, I take him with maybe a bit more pinch of salt, but especially like back in the days, like 2016, 17, 18, I think pre-Benzo, I think he had a lot of very good points to make. Every now and then he'll still come up with something very good, but it's interesting to hear that. I don't want to take away too much from the point. That's definitely the case, and that's definitely something, I've seen even in my own clients, like we might be simply just working on lifting weights or, eating in a certain way. But ultimately, at the core of that, what is there? It's discipline. It's discipline and a structure that is inherently life-affirming, at least in the way that I see it, because the more you sort of expose yourself to that, and it certainly does have this kind of it very much has a Saturnalian understanding of life and the matrix, and obviously the way it correlates with time. it intertwines with that, this sort of lifestyle of discipline and looking after yourself, trying to become stronger, trying to become better. But it's interesting when then it starts to bleed into one's spiritual life and mental life. Like I start to see that the same clients that 7-8 months ago, before they joined me, they were posting stupid shit on Facebook, and then posting stupid negativity all the time. All of a sudden, now they got their shit together as a result of this continued discipline, and now are working on businesses, now working on their relationship. They just bought a house, like all that kind of stuff. I think is very interesting and it's very valuable. I agree that it is a process of magic, and I think that what you got to understand is that seeing that you can have that impact on the world is I think it's probably the most rewarding, beautiful thing that I think a man can experience. But also, it's something that, again, full circle, Ouroboros moment in the conversation, it's as within, so without. If you have to start by yourself, and then when you start that with yourself, then the right people, it's almost like the universe places them in your path to then be able to pass the same key on to them. It's very interesting how it works.
I agree. As I said, this is black metal poetry, to say that we're gonna inverse the pyramids, build a new society upon the ruins of the modern age, and all of this stuff, fuck the universe and blah, 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 blah. All of these are just black metal poetry. If we look spirituality by the true essence and the core of the ancient teachings, we can understand that the universal omniscience is inside us. Crowley, again, if we have to mention, again, for example, a great figure from the last centuries, and that's why I'm mentioning Crowley, said that the universe and the godhood is inside the heart and the soul of each one individual. And if we are trying to reflect our inner void out there, what we're going to receive is what we're going to think. What we're going to think is what we're going to act. And what we're going to act is not what we really are. And this is the true detachment of life.
Every man and every woman is a star.
Exactly. And about this that you mentioned, that everyone is posting negative stuff and all of this, that they are winning and that they're complaining. Everyone has a choice to fix his life, to be in the mood to complain and winning all the time does not make any difference. And as Peter Carroll used to say, if you have a negative emotion, bury it in the chambers of your mind, because what you're going to banish is yourself or the experience.
Absolutely, man. Because I think that's the best way of being, because the alternative to that is, being someone who perhaps is lost and trying to find a sense of purpose, and unfortunately finding that sense of purpose by sending emails to a promoter and asking them to remove a band because, the views may not align, or perhaps views that they've actually made up in their own head or imposed upon the band. Interestingly enough, like you guys kind of experienced recently. Did you want to talk about that?
Yes, of course. I don't have a problem about it. I have nothing to hide.
Sure.
It was not the first time. Yes, I have performed over 300 shows worldwide, everywhere. Sometimes, most of the times, 90% of the times, I perform from non-political or political correct people. 3-4 times, I had invitation to perform to non-political correct events, and I accepted. Why accepted? Because I believe that the art must not have censorship, must not have bounds. As I am able to perform for a non-political guy, for a Satanist guy, for a left-wing guy, for a woke agenda guy, I can perform also for a nationalist, for a patriot, or whatever. For me, my criteria is the professionalism, is the honesty, and it's the passion towards the art. I don't care if someone is left-wing or right-wing, Satanist or Mormon. I don't care. So all of this that they are screaming about the human rights, about the true freedom and liberation of the art, and all of this manifesto of the new age, it's are the same persons that they put censorship in the arts. And many times in the past, some important persons in the genre, but let's respect because they are not in front of us in this conversation. So I'm not speaking never behind the backs. They have they had pushed me to make an apologize for all their interviews, or apologize for some of my choices and collaborations I had with some bands that they are not accepted by them. And I never did. Why? Because there is no apologize in the art. We must not compromise to any of these shits. But as long as we stay silent and we leave the whole system to show his finger and demands where we play, with whom we're gonna talk, to which magazine we're gonna have an interview, and control us, this is not art. Art needs purity, needs freedom. So, yes, I played to Asgastray before 7 years. Why I played to Asgastray? I don't care if they are nationalist or not. I did it because it was of the most professional festivals I have performed. They were gentlemen. They were kind. No one disturbed me there about politics and all of this stuff. So I did it. I performed there. Why have to apologize? I have performed for over 200 festivals that they are left wings as well. So why to put a stop in my choices?
I think one thing to sort of give you a bit of clarification on just my own stance in general, I'm someone who is inherently anti-censorship, whether it is imposed by a conservative right group or the left. It's, I despise censorship. Why do I despise it? Well, there are a multitude of reasons, but at the core of which is my own upbringing in Iran. Having Islamic ideology hammered down on us from every fucking corner. You can't dress up a certain way, you can't play certain music. And of course, from a teenager, I was always the fuck you person. I was like, yeah, don't tell me what to do. I'm going to play this, and in our case, it wasn't just a case of being cancelled. It was in the case of being in legitimate danger, where I think at the time we didn't even really think about how dangerous it was. It becomes more apparent to me now when I see how much we were actually risking. And granted, as teenagers, we didn't really have as much to lose. But nevertheless, that spirit has remained the same today, and I kind of, one thing that throughout the year has kind of puzzled me, is I think, for example, if I was, if that was me, I think that, first of all, you don't win wars by withdrawing from battles. Okay, that's number one. And I think that the other thing to add to that is the fact that I think, so like you said earlier, it's not the fact that it's the one festival, but then it's a whole laundry list of things that come with that. And I think that that's, ironically enough, an inherently very fascistic view of the world and approach to life. Just super ironic, I think, and actually quite unfortunate. I wish it wasn't that way. And I wish that there was more reason to be had within that. But, one thing I will say, I do appreciate your honesty in saying that and acknowledging that, okay, that's the nature of the event. I think that a lot of people's concern would probably be more so from the perspective of, well, if you are okay playing an event like that, then you must believe the same things as they do, So that's kind of, I think, where a lot of that comes from. It's the association.
That's total bullshit. I think you understand as well this. I have performed to over 200 festivals that they were left wings. What does it mean that I'm a communist? No. Okay, I performed then to 3 patriotic festivals. What does it mean that I am a fascist? No. I'm an artist. I perform everywhere, worldwide. But the crazy thing is that the festival that we performed was not a political one. Of course, they had some NS bands and all of this stuff that you already know. The crazy stuff is that everyone right now, they are standing with the side of Ukraine, right?
I already know where you're going with this.
Okay, everyone shouting about the glory of Ukraine. Okay, and of course I respect that. So what is the problem that I performed to a festival that they are, many of them were nationalists and they supporting Ukraine? From the moment that the governments of the people that they cancel Αχέροντας, paying for weapons to be sent for the war. Or I ask something else. If I have a proposal now to perform in Russia, this means that I'm against Ukraine. I had already a proposal to perform in Russia. We have performed 2 times in Russia. We had a mini tour, and I had again a proposal to make a tour in Russia. What does it mean? That I'm taking a side to perform in Russia against Ukraine? Or that I performed in Ukraine back then to the nationalist festival means that I'm standing against 2 other people? This is the problem. I dislike the same, all the people, even right wings, left wings, Satanists, Christians, Islamists, or whatever, that they are dogmatic, fanatic, blind, and they cannot think outside of the box. I knew from the beginning that I'm going to have the same problems when I accepted to perform there. Do you know why I did that?
Yes.
I did that
Why did you do it?
Yes, I did that because I didn't like to see all of these bands, the black metal bands, that they're raising the banners of hate and by adversary and non-compromise, but they are in fear to perform everywhere, and they aligned and compromise with the political correctness. If we are true free spirits, we must not put ourselves and the art in such boxes. And as long as we have this attitude, all of these bans, labels, persons, everyone that is banned every fucking day because they leave the other people to show them and to demand what they want to do, everyone that is kneeling in such situations, in 2 years, we will not have any black metal concert around because everyone will judge the others, will ban the others, will cancel the others, and the whole situation will turn against each other. And I decided to perform there because I wanted to say a big fuck off to everyone that's compromising. And to everyone that put boundaries. It's very well known that Αχέροντας is not a political band. I don't like even the term religious band. We're a spiritual band that we create art for the individuals that would like to say behind the skin of matter, that's all. We don't like the labels, but unfortunately, people are living with the labels. It's the easy way to accuse, to judge, and put a label to everyone. Okay? I'm seeing everyone screaming about Christianity. All the black metal bands out there. But no one is speaking for Islam.
Well, we are, but yes, I agree with you. TRIVAX
No
is
one
different.
speaking-
You're very right. Yeah.
And do you know why they are not speaking about Islam? Because they are afraid that they will be accused for National Socialism if they are speaking about against Islam. And this is not true. To
It's
speak
not true.
against, it's not true, of course. For me, the problem is not Christianity in our days. I was watching when the ancient building in France was burned before a few years. I was seeing black metal people having party about it. Hey, man, come on. This is European legacy. We must not be proud. What does it matter if it represents something from Christianity? It's a heritage. It's a legacy. We leave fanatics to burn our legacy because of what? And I'm gonna see the tree and not the forest in these situations just to be acceptable by whom? The media or whatever anyone wishes to show me what is right and what is wrong. And where is the individualization in this thing? True individualization is to have my own thinking, my critical thinking, to act with respect without disturb anyone, and to do my own thing in respect and honor. If this is unacceptable, then this is not my problem. But if you ask me what is the real problem in the world, I will not say any specific group of people. I will say that the problem in our age is the same people.
Interesting. That's a good take. I like that. Yeah. I think that. Yes, please carry on.
And about this cancellation we had before a few days. Yes, I had 3 more cancellations in the previous months, but I give my respect for all these organizers that they don't give a fuck and they invited us to perform everywhere and they are still doing it. And because I know what they are facing, because they are telling me everything, and because I'm running Jazz and Sounds, the label, and I have many connections worldwide, and I'm speaking with a lot of true individuals out there, and I'm exchanging opinions. I give my respect to all of these guys that they are not compromising, and they keep black metal as it is. Black metal is adversary. Black metal, it was like the punk in 70s. It's a revolutionary movement, you know? It's not just about anti-Christianity. It's not about only Satanism. It's about the expression of the inner world. It doesn't matter if someone is Satanist or pagan or left-wing or right-wing. I have met right-wings that they were really blind as Islamists. And I have met left-wings, hippies, and they were amazing people, and I had wonderful conversation with them. And the opposite. We can find everywhere beautiful people and ugly people. And what defines the quality, it's not the philosophy that someone carries behind. It's the quality and the ethos that he transfers towards you. And instead to look to watch what distinguishes the people, it's better to see what it connects people. And what I'm watching right now is that the black metal scene is kneeling because they are giving so much focus to what others think, to what others say, about gossip, public relationship, and make compromise with everyone just to make their bands bigger for fame, for money, or whatever. This is unacceptable for black metal. But I respect all of the big bands that, of course, I understand that they are living from their music, and I give my respect to these people. But for people that they are not living through the music, but they are doing their own hobby, if I can say it like that, and they are creating art without have any privilege of fame or money, I think this is the curse of black metal scene nowadays.
Yeah. I think unfortunately the problem is that it's not exclusive to black metal. Now, yes, black metal, you can look at it as an uncompromising genre, you know, and it's a difficult thing to like musically, I find it difficult to actually pinpoint because of just everything going from first wave into second wave and how every band in the second wave sounded different to each other, and then each band within the second waves, even those bands' albums all sounded different to each other, you know. So I think that the thing that's kind of common within all of that you can perhaps begin to define the genre's identity is in its rebellious spirit and harsh nature. Now, I think that That said, I don't think that what you're describing, the issue that's going on at the moment, is exclusive to black metal at all. And I think that, like I've made a case before, like what percentage of black metal is actually NSBM? Like let's just be real about that. What is it, like 5%? Like if you were to run it through AI and then say, like, how many bands are genuinely, legitimately NSBM? Is it even 5%, 2%, 1%? It's not that big. But then for some reason it's portrayed like it's a big thing. Like you always see memes about it as if it's the majority. And I never understood that part. I never quite got why that is the case, because I have played many, 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 many shows, just as you have. And it's safe to say that, as someone who actually comes from a different country, as someone who comes from the Middle East and has played all over the UK, I've played in London and I've played Germany, Romania, Netherlands, Italy, Spain, all these different places. I don't think I've ever had any interactions like that, at least not in person or with anyone who even is of that descent, and I think that the reason is that it's this illusion that's kind of built up, and then you get I think it's an illusion, but I think that this illusion is not a reflection of black metal. I think this is a larger scale cultural problem, and
Exactly.
and I think that's unfortunate that it's bled into our scene and then people have to deal with it. That's not to say that, by the way, that's not to say that NSBM or Nazis in black metal don't exist, but they exist everywhere else also, okay? And they're not the majority. They're far from it, okay? And I think this whole thing of running around calling everyone a Nazi is only feeding into that. It's only increasing it as well, so it's actually extremely counterproductive. I don't...
Yes, because
it's
the
hard to
criteria
discern.
have changed. Yeah.
Yeah.
As you said, 5% of the bands are an SBM. Yes, maybe. I don't know, because an SBM, it was not my cup of tea.
No,
Okay?
neither was mine. No, I never got into that kind of stuff.
But because I didn't said anything about an SBM, this does not mean that I am an SBM. Okay?
Sure.
And why you said before, and I agree with you, that why so much a big deal of that? Because if you say something about Islam, you will be banned as Nazi.
But here's the thing. Sorry to interrupt you there. You're making a good point there, but I'd like to come in here. Islam and Nazism are incredibly similar. I don't know if people realize this part. I don't know if people looked into it enough for themselves to understand how similar they are. Because if Islam was a political ideology, it would be more far right than Nazism is, if anything. I don't think people quite catch on to that part. The only differentiation comes from the fact that they say, oh, it's a spiritual difference. So Nazism is a political movement, Islam is a spiritual movement. For that reason, they're different. But if you look at, in terms of, if you really break it down, if you look at the concept of jihad and put it against Mein Kampf, both have the same meaning. Both have the exact same identical meaning, which is struggle. And I urge people to at least educate themselves a little bit more about this, okay? And
that's why I said in the beginning that that people put aside philosophy and history is a big problem. It's a lack of education. And in your question, why this happens in the scene, I think it happens because the society has created so many criteria to be able to accuse you for what you represent. If you are saying something about Islam, you are Nazi. If you say that you like Spengler or traditionalism or Evola, you are Nazi. If you are speaking about how you see women and you are a more traditional way, you are a toxic, a male person. If you are talking about this or that, you are Nazi, you are toxic, you are narcissist, you are fascist, you are capitalist. No. we have put so many boxes, and the society serving a great purpose for this. They have created so many criteria that if you are thinking, if you are starting to think outside of the box, you are banned for them because they want ships. Society needs ships to follow exactly the line that they have put in front of you. If you are not walk the line that they have in front of you, then you are a Nazi, you are a fascist, you are whatever. It's logical. I have never seen any person out there for pedophiles that many shits came the last years for many bands about pedophilia. No one accused these bands for pedophilia. But Nazism is bad. Communism is bad. This is bad. But pedophilia is cool.
It should never be cool. It should be death sentence every time.
But a lot of
and now you get MAPs as well, minor attracted persons. Like, how fucking stupid is that? Like, how much have we regressed? This is honestly, again, I hate to interrupt your flow there, man, but but to me, it becomes so difficult to try and convince myself that this is not an intentional dumbing down of people and culture to fuck with humans. I find it really hard to not think that.
The things I think that are more simple. Everyone has the right to express his will, his art, his beliefs, his mentality, his perspective, whatever, without disturb the other. And I think the more beautiful thing to be evolved as individuals is to exchange opinions. Mm-hmm. If we are able to accept democracy as the best solution in the world, democracy has a great challenge. What is the challenge of democracy? Is to be able to sit with every person in front of us and accept his different opinion. Absolutely. Who can do this? Who can do this? Who can do this? I'm really very excited when I meet a person with different views than mine. Religious, politics, social, whatever. I love to be with a person with different opinion. But what I have faced till now in my life was that everyone that is sitting in front of you, the first thing is to judge you. And if you are not aligned with his own perspective and mentality, he's attacking you. So what is the freedom? For me, I love this challenge that democracy offers. This is the beautiful thing. And if you are asking me, even from the spiritual angle, I think this is the true evolution of an individual, to be able to empty his cup and accept new theories, new perspectives, new ideas, new philosophies at his own cup of tea. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
If we put aside fanatism and we can look the things in general with open mind, I think this is the first step for liberation for us as individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully share that sentiment, man, 100%. And I think that a little bit more eye-to-eye conversation, a little bit more, instead of arguments, I think sometimes as well, one of the biggest issues is instead of discriminating against someone because of what they think, my personal thing is that if they think differently to how I do, is like you said, I become excited, I become curious. I'm like, oh, you think that? Why do you think that? You think the earth is flat? Why the fuck do you think that? Like, how did you come to that conclusion? I'm genuinely curious. Like, what good do you think it does if the earth is flat, let's say, Those kind of things, I think it's good to keep that in mind, and it's good to be able to disagree. And, again, to come back into it, I think the way to improve bad speech, if you will, is better speech, not censorship. I'm a very firm believer of that after experiencing the shit that I experienced growing up. But you know what? One thing I'll give you credit for as well. I do appreciate your honesty there as well, because I know that when you say stuff like that, some people might take that the wrong way, or some people might think, oh, he said this or whatever. But I actually think you're being quite transparent from as far as I can tell there, and I can see that there are no ill intentions there. So, and again, people, the thing is, it's not even my judgment that so much that matters at this moment. People can listen to this and make up their own minds. And they're entitled to that as well, which is, again, kind of the beauty of it at the same time.
Exactly. But to be honest is a virtue. In these modern ruins of time that we are living, to be honest with ourselves and honest with the persons that we have interaction, I think is something beautiful. Why to hide something? Αχέροντας has not any political or religious label upon them. And we don't want to have. But I will not compromise to everyone that is coming to me and want to accept his own line.
Yeah.
Why? No, because I feel that I want to be different or, to be rebellion. No, nothing, anything of this. I just want to do my own thing, to serve the art and to serve my inner being, okay? Because I'm here just to offer my art and not to teach people. I'm not here to show them what is good and what is bad. So if someone is coming to me and trying to tell me straight or by the other way that if you're not doing this, you're banned, who is the true fascist here?
Well, this is what I was getting to earlier, yeah.
Me or him? Because that's why I give my respect to organizers that don't give a fuck and do their own thing. And one of these festivals that gained my respect, it was Stillfest in Finland. Because they don't give a fuck. It's a huge festival, invite people from worldwide. They don't give a fuck about politics or anything. I was there twice that I performed, and I never saw any fight or any arguments with the people.
Yeah. I've never been there before, but I have friends who've been, and they said that it's a great time. They said that the political stuff, that the way it gets portrayed online is, you pretty much don't even see it whilst you're there. I think it's kind of one of those things that gets inflated. I just had a gentleman on the podcast who had just played there, and we basically discussed the same thing. But yeah, man, like I said, I do appreciate your honesty, and I think that there's definitely a good few things for people to perhaps take away from this and listen to it, and maybe they can implement some of that thought process into their own lives, and maybe, hey, I don't have to be worried so much about like what people are thinking, and that there is again, just focusing internally and working on one's own integrity instead of trying to push certain specific agendas, whichever way those agendas point to. Nicolas,
some people are wondering, for example, what an SBM or communism or politics has to do with music. I will make a question.
Yes.
Drag queen shows, what has to do with black metal?
Ooh, great question. I'm not too sure about that.
So we are free to do the one thing, but we are not free to do the other thing. I think this is hypocritical.
Well, I think it's a virtue signal. I think we both know that before making the case. It's a virtue signal to say, hey, we are with the right camp here, which I don't think it's necessary to do that. I mean, if it's a thing, I like people being free to what the fuck they want to do, and
exactly.
That's kind of my thing of it, I, like you say, I don't personally think it has anything to do with the genre. It's not something I would personally go and support. If people want to do it, like, go for it, who am I to stop them,
Exactly. I have never seen any bands talking against the woke agenda. What does it mean? That they are supporting the woke agenda? No. Who
Mm.
cares about this in black metal and in the art? Everyone is
Yeah.
free to decide and make their own choices. It's not
Mhm.
my problem what they are doing in their personal lives. What I'm interested in is how much pure and passionate it's for the art.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Nicolas, this has been a fucking pleasure, man. I've really, really enjoyed talking to you on the podcast.
I thank you for the honor. You are an amazing person, so kind, and I love your energy. You are so much positive, and my respect to you, and thank you for the invitation. It's my honor.
Thank you, sir. The honor is mine. I appreciate that, and the feeling's mutual. Before we wrap this up, is there anything you would like to tell people? Anything of the band that you've got coming up? I know you obviously just put out the new album.
I will leave the music speak by itself.
Excellent. There we go. Okay, and the links to all of that will be in the description so people can go and listen to it. Again, Sir Nicolas, thank you so much for your energy, for your time and your wisdom on the podcast. And to everyone else who's been listening, I hope you guys have enjoyed this one because I know I very much have. And be sure to support ACHERONTAS, and we'll see you on the next episode of Iblis Manifestations.